We're going to try and see how it's relevant to today and how we apply it. It's more than just applying. It's actually when the Torah teaches something, it does it in such a beautiful way that rather than say you must do this or this has to be done such a way, it tells us a story where the characters of the story behave in a way that inspire us to do the same. And that's what we're going to try and work out and see what the Torah is trying to teach us. So it all depends on our time, but we're going to see actually today what it means to be a good person. So many people say, when they're asked, are you a good person? They'll stop for a moment and think, yeah, I'm a good person. I am. Right? If I turn around to you and said, are you a good person? What would you say? Yeah, right? No one's going to say, no, I'm not a good person. Do you help people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you act kindly to others? Yeah. Here we're going to see that the Torah has a very different standard in order to be able to answer yes to these two questions. The Torah expects much more than what we tend to think is being good or being kind, being helpful, etc. So let's learn. So we are going to start on page 201. On verse 16. Here the Torah introduces the concept of Lavan having two daughters and Yaakov wanting to marry which one? The younger one. What was her name? Okay. So let's see inside. Torah says Lavan had two daughters. The older one was called Leah and the younger one was called Rachel. Leah's eyes were tender and Rachel had beautiful facial features and a beautiful complexion. What does the Torah say? How does the Torah describe the difference between Rachel and Leah? Who can tell me? We just read it. One was?
One in the eyes and one in the from the inside and one from the outside.
Just simple. What does the Torah say?
One describes the eyes and one describes the face.
Okay. So what does it tell us about the face of Rachel?
She was beautiful.
She was beautiful. So people have the understanding many times Rachel was beautiful. What about Leah? Was she beautiful?
No.
You see, you said no. Why not? What is it?
They said she had puffy eyes and
Does it say puffy eyes?
Tender.
Tender.
Yeah,
What is tender?
Hard.
Hard.
No, they're opposite.
And they're soft.
Soft.
So she would cry a lot. Why? Because people would say,
Oh, shame. Sorry.
yeah, Rivka had twin boys. Lavan, who was her brother, had two girls, twin girls. Most people don't know that Rachel and Leah,
Come sit. Oh,
they were twins.
sorry. Right. Oh, really?
Hello. Rachel and Leah were twins. So if they were twins, it makes a lot of sense to say that Rachel and Leah were similar.
Very different.
And the Torah tells us that Rachel was beautiful. So then that means that Leah was also beautiful. So I know, thank you so much. Many people think that Leah wasn't beautiful, but the Torah never says that she wasn't. All the Torah just says is that she had tender eyes, and that was because she thought that she would marry Esau. Two brothers, two sisters, the older for the older, the younger for the younger. So that's important to understand for the rest of the story, the next part of the story, that Rachel and Leah were very, very similar. They looked similar, and if they were twins, probably they had the same voice. Meaning that when you heard someone speaking, right, it sounds the same. Even many times people tell me, oh, you sound exactly like your brother. And he's 10 years younger. So, you know, we can have two brothers that they can have a similar voice. Make sure, sense that two sisters have the similar voice. And if they're twins, how much more so? What I'm bringing this up is because it explains why Yaakov later on got confused. At night, he wasn't sure if she was Rachel and Leah. People would say, how could you make such a mistake? But when you actually know somebody so well and they have a similar voice and they look the same, it's very easy to confuse. People that have twin children, twin boys, tell me that sometimes they make a mistake even when they're after 13 years, 15 years. Obviously, most times they can't have the mistake. The parent himself, definitely uncles, aunts, grandparents, and even non-family, they get confused. So it's a big question that Yaakov confused. Makes sense. Anyway, so here's the story. He's going to marry Rachel. He wants to marry Rachel. That's who he works for. And the Torah tells us on verse 21. Yaakov said to Lavan, give me my wife, for my time is up, and let me come to and establish the future generations. Lavan gathered all the local people and he made a feast. Then in the evening when it was dark, Lavan took his daughter Leah and brought her to Yaakov. She told Yaakov the secret code, which Rachel had divulged, and he came to her. Lavan gave Zilpah his maid to his daughter Leah as a maid. Then in the morning Yaakov saw that, look, it was Leah. He said to Lavan, what is that you've done to me? Didn't I work for you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me? So Lavan says, in our neighborhood we don't do such a thing. To give the younger one before the firstborn, finish the week of feasting for the newlywed, and will give you her sister too for a wife straight away in return for the work that you do for me for another 7 years after the second wedding. You know, it's interesting here when Lavan says it's our custom not to give, it doesn't say the older one. You know, many people think that, as I mentioned, Leah is older, Rachel was younger, there was a gap. They forget that they were twins. He says the older one, in the sense that you can see in he uses the word firstborn. What made Leah older wasn't the fact that she was born like an older sister a few years prior, but the fact that she emerged, she came out first. She was the Bechorah from the twins that were born. So it's actually, even in the text, you can see that they were twin sisters. The way he mentions it. The older one, the firstborn from the two. Yeah, I know for a lot of people it's first time. Anyway, so what we see over here is that he tricked Yaakov. It's a very famous story. He thinks he's marrying Rachel, and he wakes up in the morning, it's Leah. Somebody who deals with marriage, like a marriage counselor, once told me, he said, you think that only this happened to Yaakov Avinu? He says it happens to every person. They get married, but the night before they think they're going to marry this person, they wake up in the morning, it's somebody else. Surprise. Anyway, so Yaakov marries Leah instead of Rachel. She tricks him, etc. Lavan tricks him, and he has no choice, and he marries Rachel a week later. Which, by the way, also teaches us the concept of Sheva Brachot. You know, after marriage, for 7 days we do celebrations. What's the source? The source is here from the Torah, because Lavan says you can't marry her tomorrow. You've got to wait 7 days, and then you can marry. Why did he wait 7 days? Because the first 7 days they were doing Sheva Brachot every day, so you couldn't mix the two simchas. Yeah? Anyway, now...
But now you get married and then you have the
we do, but Sheva Brachot is two things. Sheva Brachot can be 7 blessings that people say at a chuppah, but also religious people do every single day a celebration. Every evening for 7 days, they have a big supper, a dinner, a party, and invite friends, and there's many details to it. And they say the Sheva Brachot again for a full week, and the source comes from here. Anyway, now Lavan, was he a deceiver? Was he a crook? Was he a cheat?
Yes.
Of course he was. Did Yaakov know that?
No.
Huh?
Yes, no, of course.
Apparently he did. He knew very well that Lavan is a guy that can trick. Actually, it's hinted in the text before. When Yaakov says to Lavan, I want to marry your daughter, he says, Evodcha sheva shanim, I will work 7 years. Berachel bitcha haktana. He says, for your daughter Rachel, for Rachel, your younger daughter. Why does he say 3 days? He could have just said Berachel. And because he said, if I say I want to work for Rachel, so Lavan would trick me and bring me a different Rachel. You said you want to work for Rachel, okay, there's many Rachels. So I'll say, Rachel bitcha, Rachel your daughter. So he says, you know what, he'll give me the older one, and say, actually, she's also called Rachel. Haktana, the younger one. Right? So I've given you all she's your daughter, youngest one, called Rachel. Now, how can he trick me? I've made it very clear, I've given all the details. And nonetheless, he still tricks him. But what did Yaakov do to try and avoid him being tricked? He does nothing. He just says, okay, I've made the stipulation, I've made the condition. I mean, it's like Hamas. You make conditions with them, they break them every single time.
Well, he said we don't do such a thing.
No, that was what Lavan said. But what measures did Yaakov put in place to make sure that he shouldn't be betrayed or.
They decided on some signal they should do with Rachel on the night so that he can recognize it's her.
Correct. Yael has helped us progress. Lavan, Yaakov met with his wife to be Rachel. He said, "We're getting married, Bezrat Hashem, in a few days, whatever it may be. I know your father will try and trick me, so I want to give you a sign. Let's do a code between us. And this way I will know that I'm marrying you and not nobody else, is because if the woman that stands under the chuppah later on when I want to consummate the marriage, and she doesn't know the code, then I'll know I've been tricked. So it's a good plan. That's exactly what he does. So he gives, it's famously known as he gives the simanim to Rachel. It's actually mentioned later in the Parasha when Rachel is trying to have a child and she can't. So the Torah says, Vayizkor Elohim et Rachel, Hashem remembered Rachel. And the word Vayizkor means, what do you mean remembered? So Rashi tells us he remembered the signs that Rachel had with Yaakov and what she did. What did she do? We'll discover in just a moment. So what's the simanim? So Yael, you said correctly that Yaakov Avinu, he made a code between him and his wife Rachel. What was the code? You knew that he made a code, which is impressive. What about what's the code?
Where is this written?
It's not written in the Chumash. It's
Something
written.
said.
It's in the Midrash, in the commentaries, etc.
Wasn't the
Didn't
code
it
something
say
said? I
before-
don't know what.
Didn't it say before that Leah, that's why Leah married Yaakov, because she knew the secret code. So that was the first time, so he did it again the second time.
The second time he married her a second time.
Yeah.
Torah doesn't say she knew the code, but she did know the code. We'll discuss it in just a moment. But what was the code? The code was, he told Rachel like this. He said, here's the code. The code is, I'm going to ask you, what is the 3 mitzvot that women are in charge with?
Shabbat.
What's the 3 mitzvot?
Shabbat.
You can do.
But no, like that the women is responsible in the household. Shabbat was the men are responsible. Candle lighting is the mitzvah of the women. Chala, right? And the mikvah. These are the 3 mitzvot that the wife does, right?
Yes.
There's actually an acronym for it that you could remember. What's acronym? Rashi Tevot. What is it? Chana.
Chala.
Chana. Chet is chala. Nun is nida. And hey is hadlakat haner.
מה זה נידה?
Nida
For family purity. So
להדליק ולבשל.
So he told, remember that was before the time, today everyone knows it, but that was before the Torah was given. And most people didn't know the laws. But
את השם לא יודעת.
Yaakov Avinu studied Torah, so did other great people. And he knew all the mitzvot. And that's why he taught this mitzvah to Rachel. But nobody else would know it. So came the evening, Yaakov Avinu got married. He thinks he's marrying Rachel, but he wants to be 100% certain. So at the night, he says to her, what are the 3 mitzvot? The woman's in charge. No, how did Leah know? Rachel told her. Why did Rachel tell her? Yaakov made a code between him and his wife to be Rachel. Why would she go and divulge it?
Because she felt bad. Leah would feel ashamed if he would.
She knew that she said, let's fast forward the scenario. Leah's gonna marry Yaakov. Then come the night, he's gonna ask her, what's the signs? She's not gonna know. So what's Yaakov gonna do? Huh? He's gonna tell her, shame on you, disgrace, you're trying to trick me, compliance to Lavan, you're as bad as your father, you're a liar, How embarrassed is she gonna be? Could you imagine how embarrassed Leah's gonna be? So she said, I can't allow this to happen. You're not allowed to allow somebody to be embarrassed. Embarrassing somebody is like murder. I can't be part of this murder. So therefore she went and she told Leah the simanim. So now Leah knew the signs between her and her husband. So when Yaakov asked her, she had the answer. Do you understand? And the reason, again, going back to what I mentioned before, how did he get confused? We explained they were identical twins, and especially in those days, it wasn't like today we take things for granted. You go home at night, what do? You switch on the light. You think that they had a light to switch on? Lights. In those days, once the sun set, that was it. Finished. They didn't even have candles that we have today. You think they had candles? Or you think that they had wax and they had, wicks and all the things that make light? Talking about 4,000 years ago plus. The primitiveness of the world was, how do you make fire? Lights, you make a bonfire outside.
Can I ask you a question? So does respect for someone overtake betrayal? Because she wanted her daughter not to be respected from Yaakov, but then she betrayed Yaakov.
No, because she said, I cannot allow for my sister to be embarrassed.
But I can
What will
allow
happen?
for Yaakov to be. I can betray Yaakov by giving the sign.
She knew that Yaakov could marry her too. And if it's all about her being married to her, well, she'll be married to Yaakov. So what she did was she acted nobly in the most amazing way. And here her kindness to her sister wasn't just, many times people are ready to compromise to prevent somebody from being embarrassed. But what are we ready to compromise? My lunch, a week away, some clothes, I don't know what. Are you ready to compromise your entire life? The price that she was paying in order that her sister shouldn't be embarrassed was the entire life. She has to share her husband with somebody else. It's a very big price to pay. And Rachel was ready to do so. What an amazing woman she was. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. It's actually much deeper than this. And we see that Rachel was ready to compromise and do something amazingly special for her sister. Do we find anywhere that Leah did the same for her sister Rachel, that Leah also behaved in such a way? We're going to discover that also in this week's Parasha.
Like that. Because I think of a prayer she made that her last child would be a girl.
Yeah, it's true. So, but where do we see the sacrifice for Rachel? In a way, okay, fine. It was a sacrifice for Rachel, but it's much deeper too. We'll see. So the Torah then tells us some stories that happen later on in their life. Fast forward a few years, Leah starts having children. She has the first one, is called Reuben. She has the next one, is called Shimon. The next one is called Levi, Yehuda, and so on and so forth. But what about Rachel? Rachel has no children. We can see it in page 205. We'll read it very quickly. The Torah says on verse 1, page 205, verse 1. It says, Rachel saw that she had not borne Yaakov children. Rachel was jealous of her sister's good deeds, due to which she had merited children. She said to Yaakov, give me children through your prayers, otherwise I am as good as dead. So she really feels that without having children, what's the purpose of life? So she's really, really upset. And she's not having children. So meanwhile, at this point, Leah, her sister, has had 4 children, and she's had none. And now the Torah tells us that Yaakov Avinu marries Bilhah, because also Leah stopped having children and he wanted to have more kids. So he has Bilhah, and she has 2 children. Bilhah, who is the maidservant of Rachel, has 2 children. So by now Yaakov has how many kids? He has 6 kids, 100%. And then the Torah says that Leah did the same thing. And she also gave her maidservant Zilpah to Yaakov, and she had 2 kids. So how many kids has Yaakov now got? 8 kids. So he has 4 from Leah, 2 from each of the maidservants, and Rachel has none. Before the Torah continues, it now takes a break and tells us the following story. Let's turn to page 207, verse 14. The Torah says, in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found jasmine plants in the field, and he brought them to Leah, his mother. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's jasmine plants. So what actually happened is very simple. Who did Yaakov love more? Rachel. Leah is loved less, and she has 4 children. So you should expect that by now, the fact that she's mothered 4 children to Yaakov, he should shift a bit of his dedication towards Rachel, a bit towards Leah, and she deserves some kind of extra love. But we don't find that in the Torah. So Reuven, who was the firstborn of Leah, is really felt bad for his mother. So what does he decide to do to make his mother feel better? He goes to buy her flowers. Is that a nice thing to do? Flowers cheer you up, they make you feel good. So the Torah says that it was the time, of the harvest, and he goes and he takes these mandarins or whatever, jasmine flowers, and he comes and gives it to his mom. So Rachel sees that Leah received some flowers, so she wants some of them. So she turns around to her sister, and what does she say? She says, "Can I have some of your flowers?" It's such a big thing to ask for, no? But that's what she asks for. How does Leah reply? Does Leah say, "Sure, here, you shared with me, you shared your husband, I'll share with you some of my flowers"? Wouldn't that be the right response? But what does she say? She says in verse 15, "Isn't it enough that you've taken away my husband?" She said, "Now you want to take away my son's jasmine plants too?" So no sharing. She doesn't want to give her anything. What does Rachel say? Rachel, she understands Leah's frustration that Yaakov is not with her, he's all the time with Rachel. So he says, in that case, Yaakov can sleep with you tonight instead of me as payment for your son's jasmine plants. When Yaakov comes from the field in the evening, Leah comes towards him. She said, "You can come with me tonight because I paid a fee for you to Rachel with my son's jasmine plants," and he slept with her on that night.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, no, but the point was not that Yaakov never was intimate with Leah. Of course he was, but they had some kind of a rota, some kind of an agreement, and it was Rachel's time, and she gave her time to Leah. So it's not like she was saying, "Okay, I'm the policeman, you never get time with Yaakov, but because you give me the plants, here you can have time with Yaakov." It was saying, "I'm giving up my time, which was allocated to me. You had your own time, but now I'm giving my time too, in addition, for the plant," which was a very special thing for her to give it up, because he was a big tzaddik and it was a very special thing, and she gave it up. And then because she saw the way her sister replied, she saw that she felt left out. She felt that she wasn't getting enough love. So again, she acts courageously and gives her time for her sister. And what happens? The Torah tells us that even though Leah was barren at this point, she wasn't having children, because why did she want to be with Yaakov? It wasn't like when people read this text, it seems like all she wanted was intimacy, etc. But it wasn't. She wanted to be with Yaakov because she wanted more children. She understood that getting married's primary point is to build a family. And they were prophetesses, both Leah and Rachel. And they knew that there's going to be 12 tribes. So she wanted to have more of the tribes. So that's why she wanted to be with Yaakov. And she was with Yaakov that night and she became pregnant. And she had another 2 children.
She had twins?
No, she had one after the other. The Torah tells us she had another 2. That brings up her tally. How much does she have now? 6. And then she becomes pregnant for a 7th time. So let's read over here in verse 21. The Torah says, "Afterwards she gave birth to her daughter, and she named her Dinah." So here she has 6 boys. So how many kids has Yaakov got? 10 boys and 1 girl. The Torah then concludes, it says, God remembered Rachel. What does it mean he remembered Rachel? We said before that she divulged Yaakov's coats to Leah to save her from Esau. She feared Yaakov would divorce her for being childless, and Esau had already set his eyes on her. So God listened to her and opened the womb. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She said, "God has concealed my disgrace." She named him Yosef, saying, "My God, add Yosef another son for me." So finally Rachel has a child, and then eventually later we'll read in the next Parasha that she has also Binyamin, and she is equal to the maidservants, at least that they had 2 each, and she has also 2, so that's together 6, and Leah has the total amount of all 3 together, she has 6, and that's how we get the 12 tribes. Okay, now why does Leah call her daughter Dinah?
What does Dinah mean?
Beautiful. What does Dinah mean? Now, it means judgment. Dan, bet din, tan. Din. The Torah doesn't tell us why he calls her, which is normally it wouldn't be a question, but the Torah doesn't say a name or give an explanation. But in this case, it's screaming to the sky. Why doesn't the Torah tell us what was the reason she gave a name? Why is it screaming to the sky? Because every single time a name is mentioned, up until now, or someone who's relevant for the Jewish people, the Torah actually tells us why the name. So when the Torah says that Adam gave his wife the name Chava, the Torah says why? Ki hi hayta em kol chai. She is the mother of all creatures. When the Torah tells us that Noach was called Noach, what does it say? It says, "Yenachamenu mitzvon yadenu." He will bring comfort to the world. Every time the Torah tells us the name, the Torah says about Abraham. Hashem says they're not going to be called Abraham, Avraham, ki Av Hamon goyim netaticha. You will become a father to all nations. Always it tells us the name. When the Torah says that they called Yitzchak. Yitzchak, why? Because she loved. So it tells us. And Esav and Yaakov, so Esav is less important, Yaakov is important. The Torah says he's called Yaakov, because he held on the heel, and Yaakov is the same. But also with all the boys. Reuven says, every name, every single one of the tribes, it says the name. Why? But suddenly when it comes to dinner, it doesn't say. It doesn't say, which we need to understand. We need to say, first of all, why was she called Dinah? But also, why does the Torah not tell us why she was called Dinah? It's a double question. A, what's the meaning of the name? B, why does the Torah stop short, suddenly not tell us? So Rashi helps us a little bit. Rashi says the reason she was called Dinah, he said like this: Dana Leah Din Be'atzma. Leah did judgment in herself. And she said she was pregnant for a 7th time. And she said, if this one's going to be a boy,
I have more of the 10. I have more than 6.
I'm going to have 7. 7 boys. The 2 maidservants already had 2 each. So how much is that? 11. How much does it mean that, with the best case, how many kids is Rachel going to have? 1. So what, Rachel is going to be even less than the maidservants? That's not fair. So she prayed to Hashem. And even though she was pregnant with a boy, it turned to a girl.
How do you know?
That's what the Talmud tells us. And actually, you know, Oral Torah, it says that she became a girl. And actually from this, there's amazing discussion today. This I'm going to go into right now. But the whole concept of gender mixing and changing and all this stuff is all when halacha authorities are being called to the table to discuss it. What's the halacha? There's a whole. This is one of the big bases of the discussion, and also halacha talks a lot about in pregnancy. Is there any point of praying? So let's say some people they have a girl, many girls, and they're desperate for a boy. Somebody has many boys and they're desperate for a girl, and the woman conceives. So the question is there any point praying to Hashem now that you should get a boy or you should get a girl? What you need? I can understand praying before you conceive. Once you conceive, is there any point praying? So the halakha talks about it, and one of the places that it brings reference is here. So you see that Dinah prayed to Hashem and it changed. So and basically the bottom line is that yes, you can still pray even once you're pregnant because things can change. Anyway, bottom line, I'm not going to get because this is off the topic, but the point is that Dinah prayed to Hashem, and instead of having a boy, she had a girl, and that's the name. It's called Dinah. Because the word comes from din. She made judgment. She made an understanding that it would be unfair. That's where the name comes from. Okay? But the Talmud, the Torah doesn't tell us, and it keeps it quiet. Now, this is very, very important for us to get an understanding of the bigger picture. Now, I want to ask you a simple question. When Leah gets her flowers from her son, the jasmine or mandarins, whatever they are, Rachel comes to her and says, can I have some of the flowers? What does Dinah say to her? What does Leah say to her?
It's not enough you took my husband away.
Is it not enough you took my husband? You want to take my flowers? What does Rachel do? She says, okay, I understand that you feel bad, etc. I'll cheer you up, or whatever. Again, I'll give up mine for you. What would have been the natural response for Rachel to answer her sister?
So many children.
Yeah.
No, but that's not to answer to the point.
I gave you the code for you to have my husband.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
At least she should have said, let's set the record straight. I have you can have Yaakov, you can have more children, you can do, it's fine. I'm a person who cares and shares, and it's absolutely fine. But why are you saying that I took your husband? I mean, that is the furthest thing from the truth. Let's ask a simple question. Whose husband was he meant to be? Rachel's. She then went and shared Yaakov. She shared the coat, so she shared Yaakov with Leah. So originally she was all Yaakov's, all Rachel's, and then Rachel gave half of her husband to Leah. That's what happened? Yeah. Was Leah aware of that?
Yeah.
Of course she was aware of that, right? Rachel gave her the coat. So Leah also knew that her husband, Yaakov, actually belonged to Rachel, and Rachel shared. What does Leah come and say to her? She says, you took my husband. What was she, delusional? Was she not aware? Why did she say such a thing? You're talking about a woman who was one of the mothers of the Am Yisrael. She wouldn't be lying. She honestly, truthfully believed that Yaakov was her husband.
Yeah, but
And under circumstances, Rachel got a piece of it.
So basically, Leah's got the unconditional love of her son, and she doesn't have the unconditional love of Yaakov.
Correct.
And that's what she's trying to say. She says, my son's buying me flowers because he's got unconditional love for me, but my husband, although you've given him to me, he doesn't have unconditional love for me.
That would be a beautiful explanation if that's what she said. Meaning, no, when we bring in an interpretation, it has to fit in the words.
Right.
And she
She
says,
thinks that-
"Hame'at kachtech et ishi, velakachat gam et udai b'nish." Is it not enough that you've taken my husband? How does she justify in her mind that she was having? It was a normal conversation. She said, "You took my husband."
Blaming guilt, something like that. She wants to get rid of what she maybe did.
So she's guilty of what she did, but because of guilt, you can't lie. And definitely the Torah wouldn't record it. You know, when people speak, maybe somebody could say, she was having a bad day and she said nonsense. If that's what she did, then it wouldn't be in the Torah. The Torah doesn't tell us the nonsense that people speak. It tells us something which is important, which actually is got some truth to it, whatever, and most importantly, so that we should learn something from it.
But she thinks now that she had the sons, things are not the same anymore. That she's
But she says to Rachel, you took my husband. We know, she knows, that she didn't take her husband.
Yeah, but when Reuven offered the flowers, it means that he can see that Leah is sad that, she knows, that Rachel is the favorite one. So when Reuven does that, it just makes it to everyone that she's not the favorite one. So
Exactly, so she's not the preferred one. That means that she's not Yaakov's wife.
Yeah, but Reuven made it clear when he offered
Exactly,
the flowers.
Reuven made it clear that Leah is not the husband, the main primary wife. And Yaakov is not the primary husband of Leah. So what does Leah come and say? No, Rachel, you can't have my flowers because he's my primary husband. And now you want to take him also? It's not bad enough you've taken him. Reuven actually made it clear that it wasn't that case. So Rabbi's explained the most amazing thing. Leah really believed that Yaakov was her husband. Why? Because when Rachel gave her the signs, she didn't give her the signs and say to her, Yaakov made me signs, and if I don't give it to you, you're going to become embarrassed, etc. So therefore I'm telling it to you, because that would have defeated the whole point. If she would have told Leah, I need to give you the signs, because there's an agreement between me and my husband, etc. You're not meant to marry him, I'm meant to marry him. So the exact same embarrassment that she would have had with Yaakov later on, she would have had it with her sister Rachel. So what's the point? What? He doesn't want to actually marry me? So what? I'm being compliant to this lie, and I don't want to be part of this. No, okay, bye-bye, I'm going away. And she's been totally heartbroken, and etc. So Rachel needs to give her the code without her even knowing that she's giving her a code. So what Rachel did was she sat with Leah and she said, I want to teach you something. Let's do some learning. I learned something I want to share with you. She goes, what? She goes, let me tell you that soon when Mashiach Torah is given, women will have special mitzvot. What are the mitzvot? Chana, Chala, Nida, Lakataner. And she taught it to her. Leah said, wow, that's so interesting, amazing. Wow, thank you for teaching this to me. Fine. Comes the wedding night. Yaakov says to her, tell me what's the mitzvot of the women. So she just said, wow, it's amazing. I know, it's good. I went to the shir, right? I went to the Parasha class. So I have the answer for my kid when he comes home on Friday when he asks me. She said, look, I have the answers. She told him the answers. That was it. She thought, how random. Rachel teaches me. Yaakov asked me, I know the answer. She had no idea that this was the code.
Right.
And Rachel never ever told her entire life the sacrifice that she had actually done for her. So Leah lived her entire life thinking, I'm supposed to marry Yaakov. My father came to me, Lavan said to, look, you're marrying this man, that's it, finish. My father says, I do so. So all these years, could you imagine the self-sacrifice that Rachel did? But not only she did such a sacrifice, she never even told her sister what she did for her. And Leah truly believed that she was the main woman. So that's why she says, it's not enough. After I married Yaakov, suddenly you come along and get married to him. So I made a sacrifice and I let you also be part of the family. She never knew. Her whole life. And even now, you think after all these years, Rachel would say to her, yeah, you think so? Well, let me tell you the truth. She keeps quiet again. Again, when Leah is challenging her, what does she say? Instead of saying to her, you know what, let me actually tell you what happened. That code that you got was because of me, and not for me, you'd have had nothing. What does she say? Yeah, I feel so bad for you. Okay, no worries. I'll give my part again, I'll share. Could you imagine what an amazing woman she was? This is what it means to give, the Torah is teaching us. So many times people say, you know what, I'll give. What am I going to give? So you know what, I have £1,000 I was going to use to buy myself a nice Laura Piana dress. No, I'm going to give it to the soldiers to make a barbecue. Wow, we walk around, look what I've given. Did you give your whole life up? Did you share everything you have with somebody else? And then there's people that they're ready to give something big, but I want to make sure that every single newspaper has a picture. Everyone knows I want my name on the synagogue. It's got to be up there big, right? So-and-so gave X, Y, Z. Hey, why did you put this guy's sign on our Kodesh? And my sign you put on the wall. Why did he get a sign which is 20 centimeters and mine is 10 centimeters? And so on and so forth. Rachel, she doesn't want anybody to know. How many of us have given in such a way that no one knows? Not even the benefactor doesn't even know. And even on the cost of embarrassment and being challenged. Quiet. So when I ask her, are you a person who gives? Can we actually say, yeah, I give like Rachel gave? That's where the Torah wants us to understand. This is where, I'm saying that we should all strive, or at least know where the barrier is, so that we should work towards it.
But isn't this just because of the embarrassment that this applies? Because you're not embarrassed.
It's
So is it
100%, but yes, there's an element of embarrassment, but still she gave in such a way that she got no recognition for it and no acknowledgement. I understand there was.
In real life.
100%. Definitely, if there's
just because of the
most
embarrassment.
cases when you give, there's an embarrassing factor to the receiver. In 99%, not all, but many cases you're helping a poor person, you're helping sick. People don't want to know that they've been helped. People don't want the whole world to. But still, they say, you know what? I'm ready to be embarrassed. Let my, I'll ask in a way that, I'll be embarrassed. Or it's humiliating, but I need it. What can I do? The Rambam writes that there's 8 levels of tzedakah.
That's the highest level.
The highest level is giving somebody a job. Instead of giving them, helping them that they can, instead of giving a person a fish where he has a fish for a day, you give him a rod or a fishing net where he has fish for life. But then a bit lower, it says when the person gives and the receiver doesn't even know that they received. And
So
most
why did
times,
God listen to Leah's prayers but not Rachel's? Like he made her barren. Why?
okay, that's a separate discussion. But what?
It sounds a bit strange that they were living in the same house. They never spoke about it. Rachel didn't tell her, I'm going to marry him. She didn't see that, Yaakov is speaking to her. And I mean, how can Leah?
Of course, why? There's no contradiction. She said she's going to marry him. They knew about it. But then Lavan came to his daughter Leah, and he said, there's another part to the situation. Yaakov's now marrying you. Oh, what? I thought he's marrying Rachel. Yeah, but in addition, he's marrying you too. And by the way, this will help us understand another point in this whole story. But just before we get to that, Leah, she does a massive sacrifice. She could have had. Is Leah a woman who really wants to have children, boys, from the 12 tribes?
Yes.
Yeah. What's her biggest craving in life? To have children. To have the 12 tribes. So the fact that she prays and asks Hashem to change the name to change the baby's gender from a male to a female, was possibly the same amount of sacrifice that Rachel did when she shared her husband Yaakov. Because when the Torah says that she says, it's bad enough you're taking my husband, and she could Many people, they just look at this and they think, intimacy being, it wasn't at all. She was a tzaddiket. She was a woman of top righteousness. We don't even come to the dust of their feet. It's not for nothing that she was one of the mothers of Am Yisrael. And it would be very shallow to think that that's what she wanted, just intimacy with her husband, but rather the whole thing was about having children.
Does this happen after?
It happens right after. The Torah tells us even basically in the same page to show us how Leah was the same as Rachel. Don't only think that Rachel was a person who gave so much, but also Leah gave. For her, yes, she had 6 kids, but it's totally irrelevant. Each child, it's like imagine I came to you and I say to you, how many kids you got? 4. Okay, I'm taking one away, I'm kidnapping one. So what? You have 3 other ones, right? Would you expect that? Or if one of your children is suffering from some kind of issue, no big deal. You have another 3 and they're amazing and they're great and they're smart, whatever. You wouldn't be happy about it. You'd think, well, how cruel you could be. So for Leah, it's exactly the same thing. She's pregnant now with the 7th child. It's a boy. For this is the whole world. It's totally irrelevant and detached from the fact that she has already 6. But what's important to her is that Rachel should not be less than a maidservant. And therefore she's ready to give up her child, her boy, for Rachel. Which is an amazing sacrifice. Unbelievable. But the Torah doesn't tell us. Why does the Torah not tell us? Because if the Torah would have said, if you look every time in the Torah says, Vatomer Rachel asaf Elokim et cherpati. Or Vatomer Leah bagad. The mother said it. Said it means, when the Torah says they said, when they gave the name, or when Adam HaRishon says, Chava, every time he uses the word Vayomer, he said, it was what was announced. Like when you have a baby and you do a kiddush or you have a brit, and you say, I'm giving him the name Chaim. Oh, my grandfather was called Chava. There's a whole thing about the name, the baby naming, and the process. Every single person, when they gave the name, they shared. Vayomer, it means, who did they say? The Torah doesn't give us the details, but they said to everyone. But the Torah doesn't say, Vatomer Dina, Leah, I'm going to tell everyone. She'll tell you why I'm calling him Dina, this girl Dina, because of what happened. It doesn't say it because Dina, Rachel, Leah, kept quiet. Rachel never knew that her sister was pregnant with a boy, and she prayed to Hashem and changed it to God. It stayed a secret between Leah and Hashem for the rest of her life.
So
They were
basically,
both very equal.
I was going to say they were both equal.
Do you understand?
Sorry, it's not directly related. How is Dina? How is she going to be? How is she throughout this story?
What happens with Dinah? Amazing stuff happens in next week's Parasha. So Dinah is the main character in next week's Parasha. She's she's born as a girl. Women are, we have, how many fathers do we have? 3. How many mothers do we have? 4. Why? You think it's by chance? Because mothers are more important than the fathers, so there's more of them. The fact that she's born as a girl doesn't mean she's worth less or she has less in her life. And we're going to see next week, there's an entire section in the Torah talking all about Dinah. So, back to our point, you see over here, that Rachel is ready to give up everything for her sister, and Leah is ready to give everything up for her sister. And both of them, not to say anything. And you said embarrassment. If this wouldn't have been an embarrassment, imagine Leah would have said, I had a boy and I changed it to a girl. What embarrassing fact is that for Rachel?
True.
But still she didn't say. She said, only, of course, when there's an embarrassment, there's an added reason why you shouldn't say. But the Torah is teaching us what it means to give. To give means to sacrifice on such a level. The Rachel sacrificed her entire life to share with her sister, and Leah sacrifices her own child, in a way, her son, to be part of the 12 tribes for her sister. So they basically both made massive sacrifices. So when somebody asks you, what sacrifice have you made? What have you given fathers? We need to ask yourself 1 second, how does it compare to the sacrifices of our mothers? And what about, how am I doing it in the sense that I do it quiet? That's the message. When we read this, it's not stories about once upon a time. The Torah is teaching us how to give.
But at the beginning, it starts with the embarrassment. So that's
why. It doesn't mention there was embarrassment. All this is in the Medrash. There's no way that it says that any of them was embarrassed. There was no embarrassment. It's only when we read the commentaries, so we had the full picture.
Okay, but it's still the reason why she gave the coat to her sister.
I understand. I agree. So I'm saying in Rachel, giving the coat to her sister was to save embarrassment. But when Leah gives her son to Rachel, it's not so much to save embarrassment. It's not a clear embarrassment. It's not like if I told the world now Rachel is going to be embarrassed. It's not. But what I'm trying to say is that yes, in most cases, receiving people would be embarrassed by people knowing that they got it, and therefore it's another reason to do it quietly. But this also explains a very big point. After Yaakov had married Leah, and he'd been deceived, whatever, bottom line, he's married her now. So Laban says to him, I'll tell you what we'll do, you can now marry Rachel. And Yaakov agrees. How is that possible?
That's what, 7 more years?
Yeah, but how does Yaakov agree to marry his sister? Why? 2 questions. It's a religious question and an emotional question. Are you allowed to marry 2 sisters according to the Torah?
No, but back
No. Why? The Torah tells us in Chumash Vayikra, ואישה אל אחותה לא תיקח לצרור עליה בחייה. What does the Torah say? The Torah says you're not allowed to marry 2 sisters. And then actually the Torah adds why. Many times when the Torah says you can't marry your father's wife, or even if it's different things, all the illicit relations, but it doesn't give a reason. It doesn't tell us anything. It just says it's an abomination, or sometimes it doesn't even say. But with 2 sisters, it says why. It says the word litzro. What is the word litzro? So the simple meaning is it's like making a bundle. Having 2 sisters is a bundle. But Rashi tells us it comes from the word tzara. What is it, tzara? In the olden, especially, that was actually the Hebrew word for it. Two wives, nothing to do with sisters. 2 wives married to the same husband in the Talmud, they're called tzarot. That's what they're called. That's the name. Why? Because tzara means like a problem. He has tourists. You ever heard the expression? He has an issue. Maybe. But it comes from the tzarot comes from tzar. Because there's jealousy. There's natural jealousy between 2 women who married to the same husband. It makes sense. When the Torah allows for marriage of 2 wives, we discussed it also, I'm not going to go into it right now because it was for the benefit of the women. It was only an allowance, it wasn't encouraged. It was when they were barren or when they had no other choice. So it was the worst, it was the better of the worst. But generally speaking, men wouldn't marry 2 wives. Look, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't. Most sages, most people didn't. Why? Because you're causing strife. Tzara means strife, discord, anguish, pain, etc. So the Torah says it's one thing you're marrying 2 women and you're causing pain amongst the 2 women because you have to. But among sisters, that would be terrible. So you can't marry a sister because you're causing one sister to be a tzara of the other sister. When there should be natural love and care between 2 sisters, you are going and ruining that very gentle, beautiful relationship. And that's why the Torah prohibits it. So if that's the case, how could Yaakov go and marry Rachel? Well, he wasn't concerned about causing this strife between the 2 sisters. Number 1. Number 2, the Torah actually says it's prohibited. So how can you do that? And we know that Yaakov Avinu kept the Torah even before it was given. So I know you're saying, yeah, at that point the Torah hadn't said it. But Yaakov kept the whole Torah, so did all the forefathers. So we'll just address the second question first because it's less relevant to our discussion, but it's important to know. So the Rebbe points out that because the Torah, the forefathers kept the Torah 100%, but that was something extra pious. It was not it wasn't obligatory. Nobody had to keep the Torah. They wanted to because they were amazing people. But there were certain things that were obligatory at the time. What was obligatory? So, for example, the 7 Noachide laws were given already right after the Mabul. So keeping the 7 Noachide laws wasn't something being extra pious or being that. It was exactly like today, obligatory to keep the Torah. They had to keep the 7 Noachide laws. Except for the 7 Noachide laws, there were other things that people had to do. What, for example, not stealing or sexual immorality. So sexual immorality is not in the 7 Noachide laws, but you had to do it. And if you didn't, you got punished. Where do we see it? With Sodom and Gomorrah. So when they were doing what we call today in our jargon sodomite actions, although it's not one of the 7 Noachide laws, they got punished. The city was overturned. Why? Because it was a basic tenet that people agreed that they would keep to. For the continuity of the world, that was something that one had to do. So this, not being like the people of Sodom, wasn't being extra pious. It was the basic rules and regulations of society. One of these rules and regulations of society that everyone had to keep to and adhere to and had nothing to do with being an amazing person was keeping your word. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. It's a basic thing, right? Does that make sense? Not to lie, not to cheat people? Yeah. So Yaakov told Rachel he's going to marry her. So now that he promised her he's going to do it. But now he's married Leah, so he has a dilemma. The Torah says you're not allowed to marry two sisters, which is being extra pious halachically, versus me keeping to my word, which is the way of the land. Which one should trump which?
The way of the land.
The way of the common decency of keeping the way of the land. So Yaakov was ready to give up his own stringency, his own piety, his own religiousness, to be a mensch and to do what's the right thing. And here the Rebbe says it teaches something very important. Sometimes you have people that they're very religious or very, and they think in the name of religion, so I'm not going to go be with my parents for Pesach because they don't keep the same standard as me or different things. Whereas keeping a very strict standard is a nice thing to do and it's very important, but being a mensch and honoring your mother and father or keeping to the laws is much more important than your stringencies. So if it's halakha, then it's halakha, that's it. You can't be a mensch over halakha. You can't say, I've got to do this. If your parents want you to desecrate Chabad, so I'm sorry, we all got to do what Hashem says. But if it's your stringency versus honoring your parents, then of course your honoring your parents comes before your stringencies. And so on and so forth. Meaning, being stringent and taking extra is a great thing, but that should stay between you and yourself, not on the account of other people. So Yaakov took upon himself a stringency to keep the whole Torah. That's all nice, it's great, it's amazing, but not on the account of being true to your word, or he said he's going to marry Rachel. So when we ask how, if he kept the whole Torah, how did he do it? Because doing what he said was more important than a stringency, because at the time the Torah wasn't unobligatory. Do you understand? But today, for example, you say to a girl, I'm going to marry you, and then you marry a sister, then you can't say, I've got to keep my word and marry because the Torah now doesn't allow it. So it's no longer a stringency, it's against Torah. But then it wasn't. So that's why he married. It's the halachic problem we've solved. But what about the emotional problem? We said that two sisters being married to each other causes strife and ruins the harmony, the natural harmony between two sisters.
He knew what kind of people they were.
That's what exactly happened. When Yaakov Avinu told Leah in the evening, what's the simanim? He didn't know it was. And she had the simanim. He wasn't stupid. He woke up in the morning and he realized, how the heck did she know? Who told her? Rachel. He said, what? Rachel was so special, so kind to her sister that she gave her the signs. That's the love that these two girls have between them. I can marry the second sister. Nothing will happen. Normal two girls, that there's not such love. And yes, it's be a sin, a crime to marry them because you will, ruin their beautiful connection. But here, this is a connection which is way above anything. And by me marrying the two of them, it's not going to cause any problem. And that's why he married them.
But he knew for Rachel, not for...
I understand, but it says it takes two to tango. And when you have one, that you see how she's ready to sacrifice, then you know that it's not going to be two. But more than that, obviously if Rachel did that for Leah, then that means that that's their relationship. So when he saw what relationship they had, he was calm and he said, here in this particular case, I don't have to worry. So it makes sense. It gives us another dimension to the whole picture over here. But the bottom line is what we need to walk away from this shiur today is to understand what it means to give. To understand means to give is about being about the other person. It's not about what I want to get from it, what the other person gets, and to do it in such a way, even if the sacrifice is great. Because we don't have time, I wanted to share with you, we see this with Rachel, we see this with Leah, where do we see it with Yaakov?
What would he be given?
He does the same thing, that he's ready to give for the sake of giving and nothing for himself, and keep quiet about it, and it's everything purely for the other person.
He gave up some of the laws.
Okay, but where do we see a sacrifice in such a way? Do we have time, 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
Or you want to stop there? Huh?
Well, the fact that he was given over 7 years.
Where do we see that
What
Yaakov...
can you do now?
Huh? We see this about Rachel and Leah, beautiful. But they're married to Yaakov. Where do we see this with Yaakov? So I'll tell you very quickly. So you see, if you turn to the page, page 201. Page 201, verse 18. Yaakov loved Rachel. So he said, I'll work for you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Lavan said, it's better for me to give it to you than for me to give it to another man. Stay with me. So Yaakov worked for Rachel 7 years, but to him it felt like a few days because of his love for her. So what is the Torah telling us?
And he worked 7 years.
He worked 7 years for Rachel, and because he loved her so much,
Time flies.
time flies. And how long did it seem, the 7 years?
A few days.
Like a few days, right? Now, When he worked for Rachel, he's working, right, in order so he can have her hand in marriage. What happened? Did he actually marry her and then go and work 7 years in return? Or did he first work 7 years and then get to marry Rachel?
I've always wondered that.
What?
What? And then what?
Claudia says she's always wondered
Yeah,
that.
because it said that after the Sheva Brachot, then he marries her, but then that's not 7 years later. So obviously he marries her and then works 7 years.
So you see, so good that you came for the class today. Now you've worried all your life, you get answered. This is how amazing.
No, I wanted to ask. I don't know if you have.
So it was like this. With Rachel, he worked for 7 years. First time he worked 7 years. He didn't have anyone. He lived alone. After 7 years, he marries Leah. He wanted to marry Rachel, he married Leah. Then he wait a week. And then he marries Rachel. And then he works another 7 years being married to Rachel and Leah together. So at the moment, at the beginning of the story, he is not married to Rachel. But rather, he's working towards this marriage. So in 7 years, he's working hard. Why? So that he can marry Rachel. So what does the Torah tell us? The Torah tells us that the 7 years pass quickly because he loves her so much. I have a question for you. Do you remember when you wanted something, either as a child or as an adult?
Can you wait?
Can you wait? Very hard. And when you wait, the waiting, does it go quickly or does it go slowly? So how can the Torah tell us? Because he's so desperate to get Rachel, because he loves her so much, so it passes so quickly. Yeah? He didn't have her. If he had her already, I can understand. His love of his life is Rachel. When you're in love, time flies. That would make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But when the Torah tells us he's desperate to marry her, and he so loves her that the time flies, it doesn't make sense at all. He should have said like this. He loved Rachel so much, he was so desperate to be with her, so the 7 years that he's working for seemed to him like 70 years. Would that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's not what it says, it's the other way around. So what's the Torah joking with us?
He knows he's going to marry her.
Yeah, exactly. So it's forever.
Is it
Is it
a
higher
reflection of his
level?
relationship with Leah that he was happy for the 7 years?
No, he had no idea about Leah at the time. Leah wasn't part of the
sorry.
picture.
Oh,
He
yeah.
thinks he's marrying Rachel, and that's it. It was later on that Lavan
Sorry, yeah.
tricked him. You understand my question, Michal? Does it make sense? The question is a good question.
But he gets to see her every day.
You get to see her, so what?
That makes the longing one.
So that,
Yes.
that he's working to be with her. He's not longing to see her.
Or maybe because in those 7 years he was working the land, so he was thinking about their future.
Yeah, okay, but he wants Rachel.
But she's waiting too.
She's waiting, okay? So the Torah doesn't tell us. Maybe for her it seemed like it was for eternity.
Maybe she was
Yeah, but he
young.
sees her waiting anyway, so maybe that comforts him that
Yeah, but comforts. If I tell you, you're going to go to, as a child, tell a child you're going to go on a trip. I don't know what he likes to go. Go to New York for a week. So, my kids say to me, we're going to New York. I told them we're going in 3 weeks. Okay. So they come to me in the morning. Daddy, has 3 weeks passed? No. Come to me in the afternoon. Daddy, has 3 weeks passed? I told you this morning it hasn't passed. Yeah, but what? Before we go to bed, Daddy, how long is 3 weeks? Okay. The next day goes past. They say, okay, 1 day's passed. So what's more? Has passed more time than I have to wait? As we wait, or there's going to be more time? Sure. So what I'm going to tell him, look, your brother's also waiting. He's well. Okay, fine. It goes quickly. I mean,
But it means he enjoyed it.
huh?
It means he enjoyed it.
But how did they enjoy it? And here you see the Torah is actually teaching us what love is.
patient.
No, love's not patience. The Torah is teaching us, contrary to what everyone thinks, what's love.
This is how
Love comes to those that wait. Is that where it comes from?
I've never heard that expression, and I don't even know that it's true. But what the Torah is telling us, for most people, they understand that what's love? Love is what they get out of the love. So people say, I love chocolate, right? What they mean to say is, they don't love chocolate.
They like eating.
They like themselves. Let's say, I love me.
Chocolate does for them.
The chocolate does for me, so I love the chocolate, right? You don't love chocolate, you love the chocolate, you put the chocolate aside, you protect it, you save it. But you don't give two hoots about the chocolate, you only care about you. When a person says, I love this woman, you know what he means? She's very beautiful in my eyes, or she's very special, got good nature, whatever. And she does so much good for me, so I love her. So what he means to say is, I love me, and I love what this woman does to me. Or when a woman says, I fell in love with this man. Yeah, you really? Nonsense. What you mean to say is he's got a great character, or you feel secure next to him, whatever it may be. So he does so much good for me, so I love him. Is that what love is? No. Love means to give. And the Torah actually teaches us that in the next verse. It's amazing. Because what's the root of the word ahava? Hav. Hav is the root. What does hav mean? So we wouldn't know what hav means. So the Torah tells us the next verse. The Torah says that Vayomer Yaakov el Lavan hava et ishti. He says, give me my wife. Why doesn't he say ten li et ishti, which is the Hebrew word of natet? The Torah is teaching us. The Torah changes a very rare word. Never does the Torah use the word hava. It's the only time in the whole Torah, I think. Because it's trying to teach us hava, which here in this context, give me. Hava is the root of the word ahava, means to give. So true love is giving, not receiving. Now we understand what love means to give. Now everything makes sense. Because where did Yaakov meet his wife Rachel the first time? At the well. Why did he meet her at the well? Because she was a shepherdess. So she was taking, the Torah says, Ki ro'ahi, she was a shepherdess. She took the flock. Now being a shepherd or a shepherdess, is that an easy job or a hard job? What is it? It's very hard. The Torah tells us that Yaakov testifies himself later on. He tells Lavan, Haiti, what does the Torah say? He says, Haiti bayom, achalani chorev v'kerach balayla v'tidat shnatim einai. He says, being a shepherd means that I sat there in the scorching hot, boiling days under the sun. Burned me to terrible pain. At night it was freezing cold. And I didn't sleep because I was worried about the flock. So you see how hard it is. Painful. So Yaakov sees Rachel and he thinks to himself, poor woman. She's subject to be a shepherdess. He says to Lavan, you know what I'm going to do? I want to work for you. And I'm going to be a shepherd. So now that he's a shepherd, what happens? What happens to Rachel? She no longer has to be a shepherdess. She can stay at home in the protection of the tents, in the hot days, in the cold days. She's okay. So Yaakov Avinu is working so hard, and he's thinking to himself, I want to marry Rachel. But he says, I'm giving her. So what's love? Giving. I'm giving. Am I in love? Of course I'm in love. So when we said if a person's in love, time flies. Was Yaakov in love?
Yeah.
Big time. What was he doing? He was giving Rachel. Of course, when you give, when you're in true love, time flies. So that's what they're saying. We passed 7 days, 7 years very quickly. Why? Because if love means to get what I want, then does he get what he wants? No. When you don't get what you want, time flies that, it takes so long. But if you get what you want, it goes like this. Is Yaakov getting what he wants? Yes. Because he loved her, he gave her. So he was expressing his love. So time flies when you're expressing love. So what do you see? What is true love? Giving, not taking. So parents are able to give such love for their kids. You have a baby, 6 months old. He wakes you up at night. You just fell asleep. For a normal guy, you chuck him out of the house. But what do you do with this the baby? You give him a kiss. Because you love giving. That's true love. So if we're capable of loving our kids such a way, don't think and make a mistake that you're only capable of loving a child. The fact that you have that capability means you can do it for anyone. And that's what you need to do for your spouse too. Yaakov Avinu shows us that he does it for his spouse, not for his children. And that's what we need to strive to work on. So when somebody says, do you love your husband? Or do you love your wife? People start thinking, do I love? So what does it mean? What ring has he got me? Right? That means that he loves me or there's love of it. No. Sometimes men tell me, you have discussion, this guy, his wife, him and his wife, they have love. And I say, why does she? Look what his wife does for him, etc. I say to Mishugana. That means that his wife loves him, that he receives not love. She may be serving him. I don't know, call it whatever you want. If you want to have a better love than that couple has, then don't expect your wife to give you. And then when you say, my wife gives me just as much as that woman, so now I've got a true love. No, you give to your wife. If there's a problem in your love, it means that you're not giving enough. Because that's what love is all about. It's not about receiving, it's about giving. So don't look at this person and say, he's receiving, so he's got a better love. Say, what's he giving? Then he's got a better love. He's got a better love because he's giving. And you want more than him? You go give. You're not better than him. So here the Torah is teaching us what true love means. But this example I'm teaching what true love means, it shows us what special people, Yaakov, Rachel and Leah were. Everything about them was altruistic. Altruism. Yaakov, it shows us what's love. It's about the other person. Rachel shows us what does it mean to give. It's about the other person. And so there's Leah. Not about me. What credit am I going to get? How am I going to feel about it? What's it? Where am I? It's totally about the other. big message over here.
Do
Well-
you love Leah?
The Torah doesn't say, it's very interesting. Look, the Torah says, and this the only thing that I can tell you is that the Torah says, where is the verse? The Torah says,
God said that Leah was hated.
yeah, but we had the shiur about it last year, and we asked, could it be that Yaakov hated her, and we explained that he didn't. But the Torah says, Vayehav Yaakov et Rachel mi Leah. That he loved Rachel more than Leah. So what do we deduce? That he loved her. He gave more to Rachel, but he gave also plenty to Leah. So of course she was loved. It's intimated from the verse. But
But I also read that this line would mean that because of what she did to Leah, he loves even more Rachel. And not that it was
yeah, 100%. But therefore we see it time again that in the Torah is not telling us stories, but rather
How to
guidance. It's teaching us. And imagine, think about it. If the Torah wanted to do this not as a story, but rather as an instruction, what would it tell us? You need to be kind to give somebody, your whole life, to sacrifice and not say anything. It's impossible to write that. You can't write this as an instruction. It doesn't work. It would be too much to write and too much to apply. So the genius of the Torah is that it tells it to us in a story. Because the story inspires. And what we need is inspiration, not instruction. And that's what it's doing. It shows us in a way when you say, oh wow, look where, and that encourages us to do it. And that's therefore we must always understand that all these things that they seem like silly, stupid verses or superficial or nothing in it, is teaching us, guiding us what's the way of life.